Hello and welcome back to the Dibber podcast. Today I am joined by Dave Cannon, who has worked at Gunn Moore for nearly 25 years, starting off as an area sales rep and has gone on to become a key sales account manager. Dave is someone who has a vast wealth of experience in the sales arena and constantly goes above and beyond to make sure his clients are satisfied with the service they have received. We will discuss how sales trends have changed over the past 25 years and how Dave has learnt and adapted to these. Hope you enjoy the episode. Dave, thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Arvid.
So you have been at the same company for nearly 25 years. Where did it all begin?
It began with an advert in the grocer. I've always loved sport. And when you see an advert for a company that is looking for somebody, the Gunn Moore, who we're predominantly talking about today, is actually owned by a darts company. So my role isn't just cricket. It's predominantly cricket, but also the company sells currently darts, snooker equipment, sports balls, and netball and basketball posts. In the early days, we had hockey, bowls, as in green bowls, flat green bowls, lawn green bowls, one of those. So, yeah, life's changed a little bit. In the process, we've had table games involved in the company as well. So, yeah, back in, I think it was 95, I joined Unicorn, covering the East Anglia and the South East. We've taken in part of London with that. Was very happy in the role. It's funny, in those days, you used to go into a town and you could spend a day covering that town alone, just calling on 4 or 5 accounts. Nowadays, you're probably doing 40, 50 miles a day to cover 4 or 5 accounts because the independent sector has changed and my role has changed along with that.
So you've been at Gunn Moore for nearly 25 years, and it's a brand which has been around for over 135 years in a very traditional sport of cricket. How have you seen trends change over the years you've been working there?
It's interesting, actually. When I started, we had 4 bats. So the range of bats when I started, we had a Diamond, we had a Maestro, we had the Autograph. Believe it or not, we had a bat called the Cannon, which is possibly how I got the job, having that as a surname as well. And then we had another bat called the Superstar, which was a generic bat that we would use just as a price point bat. The rest of the range was covered across 3 different levels. So you only really had 4 price points on adult cricket bats. And then the selection on juniors was even smaller. Nowadays, we're up at 6 different profiles, somewhere in the region of 7, 8 grades. So the number of grades has increased, the profiles have changed, and it's taken time. Nowadays, the requirement that seems to be out there for what people want to use, it seems to be very defined. So we're trying to make as many options for people so they can find what they're after. And that includes having bats. Once upon a time, you had a short handle bat, or possibly you had a long handle bat. Now the range covers a number of different lengths. To start with adult bats to begin with, yes, we still do traditional short handle, which is a 555 mil blade, 55.5 centimetres, and that's got a short handle in. Same blade, but with a longer handle in. But now we do a different configuration where you've got a 54 centimetre blade, so a centimetre and a half shorter, but the actual, you have a long handle in that blade. So overall, it's a short handle, but you've got a shorter blade with a longer handle. The other thing that seems to have changed over the years is weights of bats. There seems to be more and more concentration on it. It can't be any heavier than. I'm not going to give you a weight because it varies from place to place. But when I was a kid, Graham Gooch used a bat that was £3, over £3. So did Botham. So did Viv Richards. We can't sell them anymore. Like if you made a bat like that, no, nobody wants that. It's far too heavy. Well, how did Gooch manage to use one? How did Botham? Botham was quite big. But if you listen to Botham going on about Gooch, he doesn't think Gooch is particularly big. So in that respect, there does seem to be more emphasis on what people think they need rather than actually picking bats up and feeling them. One of my biggest challenges is explaining pickup to people rather than dead weight.
Yeah.
A bat is made of basically two components: a handle, which is made of cane, and the blade, which is made of willow. It's possible to have almost 3 ounce variation in the weight of a cane handle in a short handled bat.
But do you think in the past where the players have used a 3 pound plus bat, heavy bats, they've used them because there was no real option as such to go for a lighter bat?
It's funny, in our factory, we have a bat from 1956, I think it is. It was used by a Notts opening batsman. Actually, it says on it, it was used when he played for England, scored 156 not out in a test match. I don't think that bat weighs any more than about £2.5
Okay.
It's trends. Things change. Actually, the whole thing is, it's what feels right to you.
Yeah.
I can go through bats in the factory and pick some up on one day and think that feels quite light, and stick it on the scales and it says it's £2.12, and you think, well, it don't feel £2.12, and it's how you pick up. Other days I can pick up exactly the same bat and think, crikey, that feels heavy, because we're all different. You have days when you feel energetic and picking up a bat feels light, and days when you're a bit lethargic and you pick up a bat and you think it feels heavy.
Yeah.
It's not a precise science, unfortunately. Cricket is a game of opinion, not just on how players are playing, but bats. And you'll see articles about why should this bat be this price and why should another bat be another price.
Yeah.
And actually, that's down to how it's grown, the amount of willow that's available nowadays. Once upon a time, the old saying was, Granddad said don't get anything with less than 11 grains. Well, good luck on that front.
Yeah.
Trying to find the bats that have been, trying to find the trees that have been slow grown, which means the grains are closer together. These are the things that go into our LE bats.
Yeah.
10 years ago, possibly 15 years ago, a decent proportion of the willow that was cut, probably into the double figures of the willow that was available, was suitable for LE bats. We're struggling nowadays. We're down into low single figures percentages of what you could use really for an LE bat.
Is that purely because of the sheer demand that's come about because of the shorter format games and more participation?
I think it's more participation. Actually, we live in a disposable society now. Once upon a time, people bought a cricket bat, looked after it. It's horrible to say that people don't look after cricket bats, but there are people out there that don't. People looked after cricket bats, they repaired them. A lot of our retail customers offer a servicing, and things have changed over the years as well with the way that, we're all applying faces to the bats now, which aids longevity and hopefully brings down the amount of repairs that are needed. But actually, just growing methods have changed, trying to find the willow. Once upon a time, willow's to an extent been farmed, but it was given longer to grow. Nowadays, as you say, because of the demand, we're having to plant, or not as a trade, the willow is being grown in probably a slightly different way, where it is growing, they spread them out so it grows a bit faster. But that's why you now find blades with 6 and 7 grains on it, rather than that tree's grown quite quickly.
Yeah.
But it's needed to grow quickly to meet the demand.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I was born in the 60s. My memory of bad weather doesn't seem to have started. I don't really remember bad weather until Michael Fish famously said, we're not having a hurricane. Yeah. And the following day, Seven Oaks, I think, was one oak. Yeah. But the flattening of trees or actually gales and storms and things like that can damage willow while it's growing.
Yeah.
So, the people who work in our factory, the experts up there, they're trying to identify willow where we take trees in, we split them, and suddenly you find there's stresses in them. And that willow really isn't any good for making cricket bats.
Yeah.
Every now and then one gets through the system, you don't notice. And then we have a customer sends us a picture and says, do you think this is a repair? And it's a picture of a bat in 2 halves.
Yeah.
That's the one which is famously, if it's snapped across the middle, that's stress.
Yeah.
Either that or somebody's used a saw. And we can generally tell if that's happened. Yeah. There is probably more chance of breakages nowadays than there possibly was in the olden days, because of the other thing is, if you want light willow, it tends to need to be dried, and you're probably drying more than you would like to.
Yeah.
So there's also the balance of longevity against performance.
How do you handle in terms of the breakages? And obviously, you're saying there may well be more of a chance of bats breaking, and we do live in a disposable society. You're right. How do you handle those sorts of conversations with customers who come back to you and say, "Well, I only bought this bat, let's say even a year ago, and I spent £500 on it, and it's broken in half." How do you handle those sorts of?
If the bat is broken in half due to stress, and it is an identifiable fault with the material, then we will replace. Unfortunately, most breakages are wear and tear. It's interesting, depending on who you are and who's playing. I've had this bat a year. I play for my university and I play club cricket at the weekend. I want to go to nets. So I'm playing a game midweek, 2 games at the weekend. I want nets in between as well. Okay, right. So you're basically getting 3 years worth of use out of a cricket bat in the space of a year. And you want a new bat if you manage to split the toe. As opposed to, in my own case, my bat's lasted 10 years.
Yeah.
Very rarely sees a ball.
Yeah.
Because I've worked my way down the order that far.
Yeah.
And I'm a family man nowadays. But it is.
And the edges are well used, of course.
And the edges are very, very well used. Yeah. And I actually haven't broken them yet. But that is the thing. It's like my favourite shot is the on drive over 4th slip.
Yeah.
But it is how much a bat is used. We will look at a bat and we will assess. Unfortunately, playing or indoor nets, which a lot more people are doing nowadays, that's a great place for breaking bats. To give the ball a chance to bounce, you've got a cushioned surface on top of basically concrete.
Yeah.
No ball in indoor nets is ever one that you're going to consider leaving. Doesn't seem to be a lot of that. No. It's a case of, here we go. Trap a Yorker in indoor nets and say goodbye to your bat.
Yeah. So just leave those.
So just let them hit the stumps.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones where it's going to save you a lot of hassle.
Yeah.
It is what it is. There's a bit more give in the ground, even in a nice warm summer. There's more give in the ground.
Yeah.
So trapping Yorkers outside in normal playing conditions, it's a lot less damage than there is indoors.
Yeah. And how have sort of innovations affected what is a very traditional sport, like I've said? Because there have been innovations in the sort of match playing equipment, which have seemed to fade out really quickly. They've kind of come in, for example, the Mongoose bat or similar sort of products where fundamentally it changes what the equipment looks like. And they've come in, there's been a bit of a hype, and then they've gone out relatively quickly. How has that changed over the years?
I suppose it's one of those things that, as I was saying, with bats, like we've increased the number of bats and there is different configurations. We make bats now that are suited to younger. When I went to school and I was 16 years old, there was the odd child that was probably up at 6 foot. Now, if you're not 6 foot by the age of 16, you're the odd one out.
Yeah.
So the thing is, the 6 foot lad that's 9.5 stone isn't necessarily using an adult bat, isn't necessarily going to be right for them. So actually the innovation on bats where we've had, so the Mongoose was a very long handle and a very short blade. As I say, in normal short handle bats, we've already got something akin, not to that extent, but you've got the short blade, long handle configuration or traditional configuration. We also have a lighter bat we call the Academy, which is suited to the large lad who just hasn't got the shoulders or the upper body strength. I say lad and ladies. And we also have a small bat, which is, once again, it's an adult blade. It's basically a 540 blade, but actually with a harrow handle in it. So once again, it's bringing the weight down. And once again, that is suited to, it increases the number of participants. It means ladies haven't got to immediately look at a harrow because a traditional bat is too heavy. There are options in there. And don't get me wrong, I perfectly understand that there are plenty of ladies that will quite happily buy a short handle bat.
Of course.
But it is that, this is a new market that's coming along over the past 10 years. The growth of women's cricket is the biggest thing that's tending to happen.
Yeah.
Equipment, yeah, there are things that come into the game, show their heads for a little while, and then disappear out. We're always looking for a new trend, but actually, to be perfectly honest, we're trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
The aluminium cricket bat made an appearance 40 odd years ago. That was banned within about 6 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
There are rules regarding what you can make product of, and actually it's interesting, there was something not that long ago about the introduction of a bamboo, somebody was like, could you use bamboo as a material for making bats out of? That's basically been looked on as, no, it's too heavy. But people are always looking at these things. If somebody could come forward and says this is the next thing, It's interesting. We did not long after I started with the company, we did a bit of market research, and we had a gentleman in who worked for us who actually researched different materials. So he looked into the best wood to use to make bats, and after a year, and this was all part of a doctorate, came back and said it's willow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Something we've been using for 120, 30 years.
Yeah.
We were using the right thing. And then, perhaps there's something different we could use for handles. Came back after 6 months with actually cane's very good, and he's probably the best thing to make handles out of.
Yeah.
So the things that they've been doing for over 100 years. And actually, in my role as it is, I get to see a lot of the things that have changed over the year, because I actually train our retailers in the differences.
Yeah.
So, especially on bats, because we make bats in Nottingham, it is that chance to say to people, there's nothing worse than one of your customers, a retailer's customers, coming in and say, what's the difference between that bat and that bat? And they seem to have the same stickers on. It's just a grading label.
Yeah.
The answer, £300, isn't probably what the customer was looking for as an answer.
Yeah.
We let people come up to Nottingham and we show them how we make the bats, and we explain about the grading process.
Yeah.
So when I was saying earlier about the fact that we had 4 grades, and we're now up to 8, that's simply because we can better grade and work out what's what.
Yeah. Yeah. And how have you personally had to adapt to changes compared to when you first started?
It's actually the biggest thing is the number of retailers has dropped markedly. We could go into a town and there would be, I grew up in Luton, and when I was growing up, there were at least 3 or 4 independent sports shops in the town centre, with another 2 or 3 on the outskirts. I think if you went into Luton now, you'd struggle to find an independent. It's multiples. A lot of sport multiples are fashion related, not equipment related. So what you're now finding is the cricket sector is covered by specialists.
Yeah.
So as more and more retailers are concentrating on 1 or 2 sports and using that as their speciality, which is good, other than the fact it tends to mean you have to travel to find what you're looking for. The number of multi-sports retailers is quite low nowadays. Some very, very good ones out there, but as I say, number of multi-sports retailers has decreased markedly in the 25 years I've been doing the job.
I'm assuming that's down to the online side of things, where a lot of that sort of sports equipment, the general sports equipment, can easily be stored in a warehouse and sold online.
You've got the online thing. I think it's just a general change in people's shopping habits. Like, people are willing to travel to find what they're after. People want a selection. So if you go into a sports shop which offers you 10 different options on a cricket bat across 2 manufacturers, if you can't see what you're after, you'll go somewhere else. Whereas you go to a specialist, there'll be 5, 6, 7 different manufacturers and probably 100, or you can have up to 100 different short handle bats alone. You're also more likely to get more specialist advice going to somebody who specialises in that sport. Whereas, general retail will know a bit about everything, but not everything about everything.
Yeah.
Once again, please don't take that a multi-sport or a general sports shop don't know what they're talking about. But, it's more choice probably is the way that things have been heading. The other thing is sports shops can't live off of selling football boots and football shirts anymore, because the big ones out there just sew the market up.
Yeah.
So you have to have a point of difference. You don't necessarily walk into a multiple to go and buy footwear or well, you're not in there to buy the specifics of cricket. That's why you go to a specialist.
Yeah.
If you want a football shirt, there's plenty of places you can buy those online and whatever. And it's a football shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Online is an interesting thing. My attitude towards cricket is people seem to know exactly what they want in the way of cricket bats, and then they'll go and buy them online. Well, if you know exactly what you want and every cricket bat is different, why would you take the chance of ordering something online?
Yeah.
Go and pick the damn thing up.
Yeah.
I've seen reviews before about about cricket bats, and somebody's moaning they've got a bat with 5 grains on it. Well, you bought it. Did you go and choose it yourself? If you went and chose it, would you have chosen that one, or did you buy it online and that's what you got? Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of very good customers out there who sell online and offer that service. But personally, I would go and try and pick up a bat if I could and get an idea of what I like.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if there's any way in the near future where, I don't know, some sort of augmented reality or VR, virtual reality, can be used to bring that experience of shopping at stores to your home. I do wonder, but it's a very difficult one because you still have to feel the actual product, especially with a natural product. You really have to feel it. But I do wonder if there might be something.
I was going to say, good luck on that. Like, to be perfectly honest, I think delivery companies are the ones that are enjoying life as it is, because they seem to be able to make money out of not only delivering but then returning it to where it came from. You only have to wander into a lot of these shops that are also drop-offs for parcels and seeing cages full of parcels that are being returned. As a retailer, when you sell something, you hope that disappears and you don't see it again. You don't expect people to order things and then return it because they don't like the colour. Come in and buy it. And that's awful to say, but if I go shopping, I walk into shops. If I can't find what I want, I don't buy anything. Or I'll buy the best alternative. It just seems to be people think that online, and I do appreciate, time and people's shopping habits nowadays. But personally, I just like the service aspect of going to see. And that has changed over the years. Service. Once upon a time, people really appreciated service. It doesn't seem to be a case as much nowadays. And that's why you've probably seen the demise of retail.
But do you think that because providing a good customer service is becoming so rare now, and it's more about volume selling and just getting things out of the door, that a company who does provide good customer service, there's actually a gap in the market for them now?
If somebody provides good, it's interesting. For every one person who gets good customer services, will tell one other person. For every person that gets bad customer service, they'll tell 10. So it does become a whole case of, if you can provide good customer services and people start recommending you, there are plenty of retailers who have queues out the door on a Saturday morning, especially in the cricket world at certain times of the year, because people know that they're going to get good service. And that's the way it is. As I say, if you don't really care what you're getting, order it online. But actually, if you want to have the right size, I'm not the best person in the world, because in the respect of, I like to go and shop in a shop, but that doesn't mean I haven't ordered things online before. And trust me, I've got 1 or 2 shirts that don't fit perfectly because I liked it when it arrived, even though the sleeves were a bit long, or something like that. That is the reality of the world. People rely on selling stuff. But actually, if you can provide a good service, I think people appreciate it and will come back. That's, how do you keep custom? You make sure people keep coming back to you. Unfortunately, online, there are so many out there that even if somebody isn't happy with the service that they've got, they'll just move on to the next one. I think there also is, like, in current climate, there is reality. People are expecting, we having seen something about the just-in-time way of delivery, which has applied to really most of the retail sector over the past umpteen years.
Yeah.
And that's sort of falling off a cliff over the past year with delays in getting stock, if it arrives at all, delays at port, delays everywhere. You know, COVID has made a difference. Interestingly, this time last year, we were in lockdown and we was all sort of, hello, what's going to happen? And then when things started moving towards the end of February, suddenly we went from ticking along to crikey.
Yeah.
And within about 8 weeks, the whole cricket trade had run out of stock. We'd never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's a case of, why haven't you got? Because nobody was expecting
this.
These sales in this respect.
Yeah.
You know, and we do live in a society where if people want something, they expect to be able to get it the next day. And now suddenly it's a case of, sorry, you know, we're waiting for stuff to arrive. We make all our bats in Nottingham, but that's taking long. Basically, we sold out of bats so quickly last year that we're just playing catch up.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, it was, if it's not in stock, it should be in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Now that's extended to 4, 6, 8. We just, the orders keep coming in, which is great, but the length of time, the wait is extending.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the beast. Making cricket bats is an art. We have craftsmen in our factory. A lot of them have been with the company for well over 20 years. You know, there's people in there been there for 40 years.
Yeah.
They know their trade. They know how to make a cricket bat. You can't just phone up the local job centre and say, have you got a couple of out of work bat makers down there? Pod shavers, I think the phrase is.
Yeah.
Have you got a couple of people who can make cricket bat? They need to be trained.
Yeah.
And actually training somebody means that you're taking somebody away from what they're doing at their maximum output to try and keep up with where we are at the moment. It's an awkward situation.
Yeah.
You know, we probably need more staff because of the current, but is that going to carry on like that for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Or are we seeing a blip where it just goes up because of the lack of availability over the past year?
Yeah.
Sees a sudden surge, and now we're going to drop back down a little bit next year.
Yeah, I guess it will normalize at some point, but there's such a backlog of so many things around the world in terms of trade and the shipping and the freight that you'd probably, if you had to hazard a guess, you'd probably see 2023 starting off in a similar vein and then towards the end of it correcting and then normalizing a bit towards 2024. Just depends, as long as fingers crossed we don't get any more variants.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
And we should hopefully be normalizing now by the looks of it. But you just don't know. It's very difficult to predict and forecast. If you oversupply and get or overorder a supply of product and it just sits there in the warehouse, then you've put in a lot of cash which is tied up in your products and it doesn't sell. Whereas if you undersupply, then you have the issues we've had over the last 12, 18, 24 months, and which will probably carry on for another 12 months, you would think so.
There's a lot of people out there, if only we had a crystal ball, there's a lot of people could have made themselves very, very rich. Yeah. Unfortunately, we haven't got a crystal ball. And actually, I think the cricket trade has survived the pandemic relatively well, in the sense of the first lockdown took us into the middle of July. Yeah. Or I think actually things started freeing up in June, but basically sports wasn't allowed to carry on until the middle of July. And you're sitting there thinking, well, and we saw sales in July that echoed our the retailers' better seasons, which are generally, or better months, which are generally February, March, April. Yeah. And this time it turned into June, July and August. Yeah. So suddenly it's a case of, right, okay. Yeah. And then we go back into a lockdown in the December of 2020, come out of it in April and 2021. And really, it's suddenly a case of, right, I think the second lockdown was a case of we've been locked down in the dark. Yeah. Over winter, short days and long nights. And once that was lifted, it was a case we need to get out and do something. And suddenly cricket just went through the roof.
Yeah.
And it's great, but we couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah.
Because nobody was expecting what we had.
Yeah.
So,
as a salesperson, is contact more important now with your clients or less important, especially with the progress of technology?
contact is as important as it's ever been. I've done this job for a length of time that I would class the majority of my customers almost as friends. You know, they know me, they know they can take the mickey out of me and I give it back. We might be in touch in different ways. It's interesting though, you don't get the feel always when you're doing a Zoom call or a Teams call or whatever. Body language tells you a lot. And when you're stood in front of somebody, you can explain and they're more likely to understand. When you're actually telling somebody on the phone or even on a Zoom call and they can see your face, it still doesn't always sink in. I would say, personally, life is changing. There is becoming a more remote way of doing things. I think flexibility is good, just actually in general work sense. I've seen my role change in the sense of once upon a time I was on the road 5 days a week. When I started on key accounts, which covers national and specialists, it became a case of I was probably on the road 3.5, 4 days during that week with a day's worth of preparation. And nowadays we're probably at 3 days a week and 2 days worth of prep. Obviously that's COVID has affected that anyway. I never heard of furlough until 2020.
I had to Google the definition of furlough.
Well, it's funny because I as other people in the trade were, we were furloughed because we couldn't go and see customers because the customers basically weren't there. And, they're trying to maintain businesses and just get them to tick over. Those that were online were still progressing, but technology enabled us to supply them on we have a B2B site, so they can go on that and order if we've got stock. So there was contact with the customers, but we did get furloughed in the end. But actually since September 2020 we've been working all the way through, and getting out to see customers again is, I think any salesman will tell you that's what they live for. We don't want to be sat at keyboards. I don't really want to be doing spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are great for showing what needs to be done or where we are against previous years. But actually, dealing with the customer face to face, it's a people game. Always has been. I tend to feel that people like to buy off of people. So when I'm selling to my customers and subsequently when my customers are selling to their customers, you're buying off of a person. And love being out on the road. I say, the art of sitting there at a spreadsheet sometimes can be just a bit frustrating.
In hindsight, which is obviously a wonderful thing, would you have done anything differently over the past 25 years that you've been in the company? Or just generally in the sales arena?
Yes and no. I say, sit on the fence. When I say yes and no, I've learned a lot in the past 25 years. There are times when inexperience has possibly led to being stressed more than I needed to be. Because stress, everybody gets affected by it in different ways. The art of saying no. There's not many salespeople like to say no. We try and do our best for everybody as much as we can. But sometimes somebody just says, I need this and I need this tomorrow. Sometimes you have to say, I'm sorry, we can't do it. Not, I'll see what I can do. We can't do it. And actually that comes with experience. I was explaining to a new buyer quite recently that if I ever say anything that sounds arrogant, please don't take it as arrogance. It's called experience. In different aspects, you learn things as time goes on. I think most of my customers class me as a friend and somebody they can turn to and ask, and they know they'll get a truthful answer. We'll always try our best. We'll always try and help out as much as we can. But sometimes I can't sail the ship if we're waiting for stock. All I can do is just give you as good an update as we can. And unfortunately, over the past year and a half, we ask other people and they give us as truthful answer as they understand. But if stock arrives in Felixstowe and there's nobody to drive the lorry to get it to Nottingham, then it gets delayed. If the boat couldn't actually unload at Felixstowe and clears off to Amsterdam first, and then we have to wait to get it back. It's happened in every trade.
Yeah.
It's one of those things we have lived through recently things, and I've learned a lot in probably 2 years that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, everything just happened as we expect.
Yeah.
But when you have delays and stock not coming out of various countries, not so much on the cricket front, on other sides, you learn, it's sort of, right, that's why we haven't got that. Didn't realise that a factory in a country the other side of the road has been shut for the other side of the world, sorry.
Yeah.
Say the other side of the road then.
Yeah. The chicken's on the other side.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is that, a factory on the other side of the world has been shut for 6 months and you don't know about it because of COVID.
Yeah.
They're taking into account there are places in this country that were closed for 3, 4, 5, 6 months because of COVID, and we do live in a global market now. So, the interesting bit is it can take so long to get something in from the other side of the world, which, as I alluded to earlier on, when you were talking about a just-in-time economy, as long as there isn't a problem somewhere else, everything's great. But you don't necessarily know that there's a problem somewhere else until it raises its head. And you might already be 2-3 months down the road of, well, why hasn't that arrived? It is what it is. I think people's expectations of what they're going to be able to buy, and I'm talking about the consumer and retailers, to be perfectly honest, need to be curbed slightly because, life has changed and trying to get what we need into the country is harder just at the moment.
Yeah.
So.
And sales not as a profession, but sales generally sometimes gets a negative rep, if we want to put it that way. And, a lot of people may be put off by a sales career. But what advice would you have to someone who might be considering a career in sales?
Actually, if you follow the route that I did, which didn't start at Gunn Moore, I started in a retail environment initially, did various other roles, but get experience of dealing with people. That's the main thing, first of all. And then if you can get yourself into a role where you are actually 25 years on, if somebody said to me, right, what do you actually want to do? 30 years ago, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And things fell into place because you get a better idea. So actually sort of look at what you like doing. It's so much easier selling something you've got interest in than selling something that you have at the end of the day, selling certain things is a job.
Yeah.
And I appreciate people need to earn a living, but actually if you can work your way to selling something you enjoy, that you have an affinity with, even better. But actually take advice from people, listen to people who are, I say senior, who have been there, ask questions of people who have been there and done it, watch the way they do it. You'll see good salesmen, you'll see bad salesmen. What invariably every company's looking for, if they make a good product, they're looking for a good salesman. That's the winning formula. You can have very good salesmen but have got poor product.
Yeah.
That's difficult. You have very good product and poor salesman. That doesn't add up to a plus either. But actually a good communicator, somebody who will explain things as they go along, and actually isn't scared to tell you the pitfalls as well when there's a problem. We don't like telling people there's problems, but there's so much that's out of our control nowadays. So as a salesperson, if you're looking for something, just watch the way that more experienced people do. You can gain a lot just from doing that. Like I like being on the road. That role has changed as well. As I say, once upon a time, 5 days a week, actually looking for diversity in a role that you do as well. It doesn't just have to be sales. My role has now evolved into, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, being a training manager for the company. So we have people come up to Nottingham, or we did have pre-pandemic, and we would take them around the factory and show them how we make cricket bats, because that's what we make in Nottingham. We make the bats themselves, and explain the differences, and we try and make it enjoyable. There's nothing worse than sitting in a training day and trying to keep your eyes open. So we make it interactive. A colleague of mine who worked for Gunn Moore for over 40 years, a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Clark, we became almost a comedy double act for some people when they turned up for training. But we tended to find that professional but light-hearted was the way to go. And actually doing something like that, it's, for me, that was 5 days a year off of the road, but 5 days a year that I enjoyed because it was interacting with customers, showing them what we were proud to do.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of what we do as a company and the bats that we make. I've worked with a lot of people for over 20 years in the company, and to see the bats that come out of there. At the moment, we seem to be on a bit of a crest of a wave. Let's just hope we can stay on that crest. We're still here. We're still manufacturing in the UK, which is, I think, something that as a country we should be proud of, for the fact that we've got a company that's still here making a good quantity of bats.
Yeah.
And making bats that people like using.
Yeah. It's been a really interesting insight into your 25 years at Gunn Moore, but how do you see the industry and the sales arena developing over the next 25 years?
That's a hard one. If you'd have said to me 25 years ago, how do you see, I don't think I would have seen what we've got now.
Yeah.
The growth of online and the decline in retailers, physical shops, I don't think anybody necessarily saw that coming. Yeah, there was always a talk of online, but I think the pandemic has just shot online through the roof, and it's seen a number of bigger retailers disappear from the high street. I honestly don't know. I don't know what my role will be in 15 years' time. I just hope that I've still got good customers to go and see. I still enjoy what I'm doing, albeit doing more on the laptop and less physically out on the road. But if that's what it is, that's what it is. I would still urge people, if you're going to buy a cricket bat, if you're going to buy equipment, go and see someone about buying it so you can make an informed choice.
Yeah.
Rather than it's all well and good. And I say this on the cricket bat front because that's what we physically make. It's all well and good looking at something on a screen. I'll tell you that all of our customers have the same images because we have an image file. What you order isn't going to be,
of course,
that image that comes out. That you're going to be able to compare like for like, because wood is a natural product. It will have little different facets to it. So if you come and pick, you get what you're after.
Yeah.
As opposed to getting what turns up in a brown parcel 2:00 in the afternoon when you're not there.
Yeah.
So as I say, I don't honestly know where things are going to go. I've enjoyed working in this trade for 25 years, and I hope I can carry on enjoying what I'm doing for a number of years yet. We have seen lots of changes. There's been a number of brands that have come and gone in that time. There's a number of big brands that you don't really see anymore, that in the 80s and 90s you would have recognised from players using them that aren't around. Hopefully Gunn Moore, as you say, we've done over 135 years. Hopefully there's at least another 100 in us, or at least if it sees me out of the business, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So, and there's some very good people in Nottingham making sure that some very good product comes onto the market. So as long as they're still doing the job, I think our customers will be happy.
Absolutely. And I'd just like to say thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For coming in. It's been a real insight into what it's like to be in the sales arena for such a long time and at the same company for such a long time. And what I've taken away from this is life is all about selling by the sounds of it, whether it's as a person, your likability or whatever it might be, to get a job, to run a business, to be a parent, to be a child. It's all about selling one way or another.
Some of the best negotiators are 7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
Playing parents off against each other, trying to negotiate, and negotiating basically is a selling tool.
Absolutely.
It's kids start off very, very early. Some of us just carry on doing it into life, into our work life. As you say, you're always selling yourself. Doesn't matter whether you actually work as a salesperson or what. Actually, as a person, you're spending life trying to get people to like you.
Yeah.
sometimes actually some people need to sit there and say, I like myself first.
Absolutely.
Like yourself, and hopefully everybody else will like you for
So
what
true.
you are.
So true. Thank you so much, Dave.
My pleasure, Arvid.
And hope to see you again soon.
You'll see me shortly.